and unfortunately it is a Talonflame, but we do have a shield advantage and we are running Stone Edge, so there is a high likelihood they don't even shield this first one. What is going on, everyone? Ox here with another video. If you're new to the channel, we do upload Pokemon Go content mostly related to PvP, and if you're a returning subscriber, like, don't mind me, thank you for the support. In today's video, we are taking a look at some battles in the Open Ultra League with a team I have really been enjoying. This team is built around Alolan Sandslash in the lead, Cresselia operating as the safe switch, and Virizion as the closer. Now, there are a few things to point out about this team. The first is that my Alolan Sandslash is actually only at level 40. This team will perform a lot better with the XL version, so if you are going to run this team, I highly recommend running the XL Sandslash. Secondly, this team is going to be very weak to fire types, but we are not running these standard movesets for two of these Pokemon. Cresselia will be running Future Sight instead of the legacy move Grass Knot, and Virizion will be running Stone Edge instead of Leaf Blade. Virizion can still wall a Pokemon like Swampert even without Leaf Blade, and having Future Sight plus Stone Edge is going to provide coverage for those fire type Pokemon like Talonflame. Overall, this team has a very solid rating on PvPoke, and it performed very well for me. If you enjoy this type of content, please consider leaving a like and a comment down below. It really helps the channel grow. And without any further ado, let's jump into the first battle right now. So I did about 5 sets with this team, all of which were positive. And for this video, I'll be going over 10 battles which I felt best showcase the ups and downs of this team, going over both wins and losses. And jumping into this first battle, we are leading Alolan Sandslash into a Shadow Wall Ring. Now, this is a particularly bad matchup here for Sandslash, especially as a non-XL, because I believe the non-XL actually will get one shot by the Earthquake. So what I did here was count to 9 Powder Snows that will put the opponents at an Earthquake and then catch the move onto Cresselia. Now, fortunately, the opponent did throw at 9, and it also was not a bait, which means that we are able to bank a lot of energy on the Alolan Sandslash while putting the Wall Rain completely dry on energy. The opponent now responds with a Scrafty into Cresselia and did actually go for the Power Up Punch bait here instead of the Foul Play Knockout, which means we will be able to reach a second Moonblast, and the opponent is going to burn their second shield as a result. Now, although that Scrafty is loaded on energy, we do have Virizion in the back, which is a pretty hard counter to Scrafty, and because the opponent is now shields down, even if they have a Pokemon like Talonflame in the back, they are at risk of being hit by a Stone Edge. Now, I'm going to throw these Sacred Swords immediately at this wall range so that we are not forced to burn a shield. This is going to leave us with 2 shields remaining for both Virizion and the Alolan Sandslash in the back, and the opponent is going to choose to come back in with the Scrafty, which tells me that their final Pokemon may also be very weak to Virizion. Could be something like a Swampert potentially, but this is going to come down to Alolan Sandslash with 2 shields, and as you could see, this Scrafty is going to get off quite a bit of counter damage here before we are able to Shadow Claw down. I'm just hoping they don't have a third counter to Sandslash in the back, and unfortunately they do. This entire team pretty much hard countered Alolan Sandslash, but thankfully we do have a shield advantage plus a massive energy lead, which means we will be able to outpace to these moves, finish off this Galarian Stunfisk, and although the opponent's team was very strong against Alolan Sandslash, it was very, very weak to Virizion, and that definitely helped us to overcome a very negative lead. And speaking of negative leads, here is one of the absolute worst ones to see with this team. Talonflame, we swap out into Cresselia, and typically Cresselia has a very bad matchup against Talonflame because it's running Moonblast plus Grass Knot, both of which are going to be resisted by the Talonflame. However, with Future Sight, we should be able to win this in the 0 shield, so let's see how the opponent is going to play this out. They do end up shielding the first move, which puts us in a very tricky spot because Talonflame could run over the rest of our team if it continues to ramp up its attack with that Flame Charge boost. Now, they do allow this next Future Sight to come through, and they are going for another Flame Charge right here. This will not KO, so I bank this energy and make a very aggressive swap into the Alolan Sandslash, looking to Shadow Claw down. These Incinerates are absolutely cooking us. They come in with Lucario. The only potential win con is landing this Bulldoze, and they let it go through. It does not KO, but puts it low enough where it cannot reach a Shadow Ball before the Virizion takes it out. Now the opponent comes in with a Wall Rain, and they still have a shield advantage, so this game is not over. Virizion is going to survive one Icicle Spear, going to look to throw 2 Sacred Swords, and then try and build up to the 3rd and swap out to Cresselia in order to catch the incoming Icicle Spear, but the opponent does not throw. They go for the Powder Snow down. Cresselia, too thick, able to reach this Moonblast and hit him with that bang. There it is. Talonflame in the lead. You would think that's an auto loss, but we have it out here looking like France in the Nations League, losing to the underdog. Alolan Sandslash into Articuno. This is a very dominant lead here for the Sandslash. All of the moves coming from the Articuno are going to be resisted, and the opponent is deciding to stay in, which tells us that they likely have a second Pokemon, which is also going to be weak to Alolan Sandslash in the back. We are going straight for the Ice Punches right here. Even after the Icy Wind debuff, this is still a very dominant matchup. Hurricane comes through. That is not doing anything. We are going to build up to 2 Ice Punches. This will take out the Articuno, and the opponent comes in with a Trevenant. We are going to throw 1 Ice Punch right here. The opponent is going to decide to shield this up, and I did not think we would be able to survive the Seed Bomb here, so I am going to shield this in order to get off 1 more Ice Punch. We'll see if the opponent wants to burn their second shield right here, and when they do, we swap out into the Cresselia. Now Cresselia does not have a good matchup here, but putting this Trevenant shields down means that we could take it out. The opponent though swaps out into Virizion. We are going to go straight for the Future Sight, and since we do have Stone Edge on our own Virizion, I think with a shield advantage, we should be able to take out that Trevenant. The opponent though is going for Sacred Sword right here, which makes me think they probably want us to take out the Virizion, leave some HP on the Cresselia for the Trevenant to farm, but since we are not switch locked, we will be able to prevent that by swapping out into the Virizion, and at this point, I think all we have to do is land 1 Stone Edge, and the additional chip damage from the fast moves should be enough to win this game. However, a game crash is definitely not something that is easy to come back from. So after a game crash and restarting the app, we find ourselves with very minimal HP and a Stone Edge. That is not enough to take out the Trevenant, and now we're in a situation where I cannot come in with the Sandslash because we have 1 HP. I need this next Shadow Claw to KO in order to salvage a draw. Unfortunately, not the case. And you know, sometimes you could come back from hard counters, you could come back from lag, but the one thing you can never come back from is a game that refuses to be fixed. Alolan Sandslash looking to get some revenge on Trevenant. This is a very nice lead to see. We are going for the Ice Punch. Opponent is going to let that go through, and right here this is a pretty big call. Thankfully the opponent does go for the Shadow Ball, which we correctly shield. That means we could commit to the complete Shadow Claw down because they are only going to reach a Seed Bomb. No need to shield this, and the opponent is going to come in with an Obstagoon. At this point, I decide to throw an Ice Punch, which is definitely a mistake. I should be swapping out into Cresselia immediately, preserving that energy for the end game because we do have 2 strong answers for Obstagoon already in the back. Now the interesting thing about running Cresselia with Future Sight is that if the opponent has a Pokemon in the back that is weak to Grass Knot, they may decide to keep it away from the Cresselia in the fear of that moveset, and oftentimes that could work out in our favor. In this particular matchup right here, the opponent is staying in with the Obstagoon and deciding to double shield. At this point, we will allow the Cresselia to go down because we have a very hard counter to the Obstagoon in the back with our Virizion, and the opponent is deciding to stay in here and throw a move, which allows our Virizion to get a very nice energy lead, and they now swap out into Wall Rain. We have 2 Sacred Swords ready to go because of that extra farm we got on the Obstagoon. Going to throw this second Sacred Sword and then go for the very disrespectful, unnecessary Icicle Spear catch onto the Alolan Sandslash. This is the equivalent of being up 40 in an NBA game and going for a 360 dunk. You love to see it if you're the winning team, but it's completely unnecessary. But hey, that's just what we do here. BM all day, every day. Let's hop into the next one. We got Alolan Sandslash into a Shadow Charizard. Now normally I will stay in here just for a bit to see if they are running Fire Spin, and as soon as I see that fire, I swap out into the Cresselia. We are actually going to call the Blast Burn right here, and Charizard does not have to worry about that Moonblast or Grass Knot. Bang! There it is. I guess you might say that Charizard did not see that in its future. Let's not forget, Cresselia is a Psychic type, and with a Psychic type move, it actually does pretty well against Fire types, considering how bulky it is. Shadow Snorlax, definitely a core breaker for this team because it is going to be resisting these Shadow Claws from the Sandslash. Going for Future Sight here was a big mistake because if I went for Moonblast instead, we would have been able to reach this second one right there. That ends up costing us. Virizion comes in, and at this point, I start thinking like Harry Maguire because I figure it's impossible for a team to have a third counter for Alolan Sandslash in the back. As a result, I start saving my shields, not realizing that the first battle in this video was literally a triple hard counter to Sandslash team, and guess what? Here it is once again. OxfordU about to make us feel worse than the England national football team for starting Harry Maguire on defense. Even Manchester United figured it out, and it's no surprise to see them being relegated from the Nations League as a result. When it comes to the Go Battle League, there is only two things you can guarantee. 1, the game not working properly. 2, Ox throwing a game. And to be honest, there's probably a 3, 4, and 5, but we'll end it there. So jumping into the second half of this video, we got Alolan Sandslash into a Lucario. Very spicy pick, but a very hard counter for Alolan Sandslash in the lead. We swap out into Cresselia. Opponent is choosing to stay in. We're going to throw a Moonblast right here. Opponent basically is at a Shadow Ball, but they swap out into Gengar instead. And this is only a Shadow Punch, so there is a high chance we could reach a Future Sight right here and get that big knockout on the Gengar. But the opponent decides to shield. So they are now down both of their shields. They go for a Shadow Punch, trying to get to another Future Sight. And this time Gengar has no choice but to say goodnight. Bang! There it is. Unfortunately, Lucario is going to come in and counter all the way down. But we do have alignment and a shield advantage, so I think no shielding the first move here makes a lot of sense in case they go for the Power Up Punch bait. But this is where I have another Harry Maguire moment, because for some reason I forgot they left with energy in the lead matchup. So we end up getting embarrassed right there. Maybe not to the same extent as England being relegated from the Nations League, but that was pretty bad. And Alolan Sandslash, unfortunately, is left to pay the price. So as you could see, even when we put ourselves in a position to win, coming back from a very difficult lead, we find a way to throw the game, just like our good old friend Harry Maguire. And as we've seen in the past, whenever you throw a game, it rewards you with a very challenging lead. Now when we swap out to Cresselia, the opponent comes in with a Walrein, which is definitely not a response to Cresselia, so this is a matchup where we could flip switch. The main issue here is that even if we do flip switch, it's going to put us in an even worse spot because Talonflame will be able to come in, incinerate down the Cresselia, and then we basically have no answer for the Talonflame in the back. So my thinking here is that we need to preserve the Cresselia, swap out into Virizion, and hopefully the Talonflame comes back in, at which point we could throw a Stone Edge. But instead the opponent comes in with a Tapu Fini, which initially you might think is a very questionable play, but in hindsight, it's actually a genius play. If we're running Leaf Blade, Tapu Fini comes in and ends up losing this matchup, but Talonflame is then safe to come in without the fear of Stone Edge. And if we are running Stone Edge, Tapu Fini actually ends up winning this matchup, and they keep the Stone Edge Virizion away from the Talonflame. So we bank a Stone Edge on the Virizion, swap out into the Alolan Sandslash, and we are going to start throwing these Ice Punches right here. Talonflame, of course, is going to take us out with the Incinerate damage and pretty much have a move ready to go. We will come back in with the Virizion, actually go for the Sacred Sword, and this is not a CMP tie, which means they are very likely to throw an Incinerate, we swap out into the Cresselia in the middle of that animation, able to reach the Moonblast and take out the Talonflame. Now this has the potential to be a miraculous comeback, like the New York Jets against the Cleveland Browns in week 2 of the NFL season, but unfortunately, this is as close as we're going to get. I end up burning the final shield here because I did not think Virizion would be able to withstand the Powder Snow damage, and Tapu Fini is already at a Moonblast, which means that Virizion is going to be taken out. That was a very difficult team comp for us to come back from, but I felt both of us played very well, and definitely one of the best battles I've had thus far for Season 12. Alolan Sandslash into Talonflame once again. We are going to swap out into Cresselia and see if the opponent wants to stay in this matchup. As we've seen, Cresselia could win this matchup in the Zero Shields by going straight Future Sight, but in classic Ox fashion, that is not what I'm going to do. We go for Future Sight the first time, they let that go through. All we have to do is go for it once again, but for some reason I go for the Moonblast, expecting them to shield, but they do not. This is very bad because now it means that they are going to take us out. The only positive is that Sandslash will now be able to come in and double Shadow Claw before an Incinerate actually registers, which means that we are still at full HP. Opponent comes in with a Wall Rain. We are going to go for the Bulldoze right here, and although the opponent is at an Earthquake, look how quickly I click on that no shield. I know they're going for that Icicle Spear. Here comes one more Bulldoze, and we could potentially catch an Earthquake on Virizion right here, but it could be risky if they go for the bait. We now swap out. Opponent is staying in, going to throw this Sacred Sword here on the CMP tie, and the opponent actually decides to shield, which tells me that they may be very weak to Virizion in the back, and it happens to be a Tangrowth. From this point, the matchup is pretty straightforward. Tangrowth has no play against Virizion unless it is running Sludge Bomb, but once they do show the Rock Slide, we could pretty much narrow down their moveset to Power Whip plus Rock Slide. That is the standard moveset for the Tangrowth. We are going to try and one shield flex right here, see if we could end this matchup in style, going for the Sacred Sword back to back. Opponent is going to actually use their final shield here, really hoping for a miracle, and that miracle would include me actually committing to the one shield flex. I'm pretty sure it would end up in a draw in that case. Call me a wuss, but I wasn't taking that chance. GG, let's hop into the next one. Alolan Sandslash into Galvantula. This is a pretty neutral matchup right here, but Galvantula could cause some issues for our backline, so we are going for the Ice Punch right here. Opponent is going to shield that up, and we are going to call the lunge bait here on the first one, which they do end up going for, and we get some very nice lag right here, so who knows what the energy count is at this point. Going for the Ice Punch, and once again going to call the lunge here. Even if they go for the discharge, don't really care at this point. We will come in with the Cresselia, and I will allow this super effective lunge to come through, build up to the Moonblast right here. This should be enough to take out the Galvantula, and the opponent is going to come in with an Umbreon. So we are going to throw a Moonblast right here, possibly allow this next foul play to come through because it is a CMP tie. And what we're going to do is try and catch the next foul play onto Virizion for some resisted damage, and we are able to do it. This will force the opponent to swap out into their final Pokemon, and unfortunately it is a Talonflame, but we do have a shield advantage and we are running Stone Edge, so there is a high likelihood they don't even shield this first one, but they do. That's totally fine. We are going to reach a second one. Does require burning our final shield, but Talonflame is about to get extinguished by this Stone Edge. Hit him with that. Bang! There it is. Umbreon comes back in. We are going to throw this Sacred Sword and actually look to swap back out into the Cresselia. Opponent is going to take us out here with the foul play, but they actually go for the Psychic instead. That may be a result of the visual glitch in this game. Perhaps they were still seeing Virizion on their screen despite it actually being Cresselia. With Niantic, you never know what's going to happen. Let's hop into the next one. Alolan Sandslash into Giratina Altered Form. I know this is a matchup that a lot of you are interested in seeing. and it's a pretty dominant one here for the Sandslash, as you could imagine. Shadow Sneak, even against a non-XL, is not doing much. We go for the Ice Punch. Opponent is going to shield, so we may as well go for that combo. 1-2, they let that go through. Giratina going to go for another Shadow Sneak, and we are not going to shield. One more Ice Punch coming through, and the opponent decides to double shield. At this point, I should have actually decided to shield here, because as you're going to see, we have no fast move pressure against this Giratina. That's okay, we could decide to shield one Shadow Sneak here and just go for the Moonblast to take this out. To be honest, I could have also just committed to the Psycho Cut down while eating another potential Shadow Sneak, but without knowing what their final two Pokemon actually are, this probably is the safer play. They come in with a Mamoswine and they get hit in the spine with that Future Sight. Avalanche comes through. We are going to build up to the Moonblast. Unfortunately, this is a CMP tie, and I do end up shielding this just in case I need the Cresselia to win, but saving that shield for Virizion might have been the safer play, but they got a Regirock in the back, and Virizion is about to clap back. And you already know how this matchup has to finish. We cannot go for the Sacred Sword. There's only one way to make this Regirock pay, and that's with its own typing. Do you smell what the rock is cooking? Bang! There it is, Regirock on a plate. So those were the battles in the Open Ultra League with this team, and in a small sample size of only 5 sets, I did manage to go positive in all 5. I highly recommend using the XL version of Alolan Sandslash, and although Talonflame is a major threat, as you saw, it could be dealt with. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like and a comment down below, and if you'd like to see more content like this, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching.